Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 7th of the ITTF video conferences series leading to the 2021 ITTF Annual General Meeting. Today is the session dedicated to governance, and on it we will have the presentation of the propositions and the resolutions for the 2021 General Assembly. Before we start with the proceedings, please allow me to introduce ITTF President Thomas Weikart, who will give you the welcome words.
Thank you, Raul, and dear friends from all over the world, good afternoon from Germany, good morning, good night, good evening. Yeah, today's video conference is, as Raul already mentioned, the 7th one. The ITTF is putting an extra effort to make sure everyone can have the best possible information ahead of our AGM, Wednesday, 24th of November. Unfortunately, some parts of the world suffer the effects of the pandemic, and not everyone will be able to be physically present in Houston. Some of you may remember my words in this same forum 1 year ago. Good governance has been the expression most utilized when speaking with colleagues from other international sport federations or from the IOC in recent times. So it's very, very important. And saying so, in 2020, we as ITTF did some important changes in our constitution, thanks to you, our members, who gave trust to this executive committee and the proposed reforms. But as we often say, the exercise of good governance never ends. My colleague Nestor, responsible for this topic in our executive committee, will give you a background of the main aspects that, based on our constitutional changes of 2020, and with the valuable input of the ITTF Tribunal and the Integrity Unit, the Executive Committee is proposing for this 2021 AGM. Following Nestor's introduction, our Secretary General and our Legal Counsel, Dylan Ma, together with the Chair of the Tribunal, Mr. Jorge Ibarrola, welcome in the ITTF family, and the Rules Committee Chair, Rudy Sporra, also welcome, Rudy, will provide you the details. We hope all you enjoy the session, and once again, I hope that we all see us in Houston. Nestor, over to you.
Thank you, Thomas. Dear friends, buenos días from Argentina. As Thomas has mentioned, the ITTF is continuously trying to make the necessary changes in the area of governance, as this is a never-ending exercise. As society evolves, we need to adapt and ensure we have the highest standards. Governance, or better to say, good governance, is something we need to work on continuously. In 2020, together, we achieved the incorporation of the Integrity Unit and the ITTF Tribunal as independent investigation and prosecution bodies. Today, we are glad to see that they are made up of professionals with recognized trajectory and expertise in the legal sport world. In 2021, and with the important feedback received from our tribunal members and our newly appointed head of integrity, we are presenting further enhancement of our regulation as we try to continue aligning ourselves with the parameters set by the Olympic world. Those proposed changes are important to provide those bodies with greater legal instruments that allow them to execute their functions and objectives. These changes are this time at the proposal from the Executive Committee, hoping that the next ones come directly from those judicial bodies, as you can see in one of our propositions. To expand on the previous concepts, I pass back the floor to Raúl, who will introduce them, as Thomas has mentioned, together with our legal counsel, our ITTF Tribunal Chair, and our Rules Committee Chair. We hope you enjoy the sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nestor. And before going into details, allow me please to introduce Mr. Jorge Ibarrola, the chair of the newly created ITTF Tribunal. Jorge, over to you.
Thank you very much, Raúl. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I believe this is the moment to make a little address on behalf of the ITTF Tribunal. First of all, thank you very much to the Executive Committee for the confidence placed in me and in the other members of the ITTF Tribunal for this task of trying to run the best judicial services provided to the ITTF. And I would like also to convey the gratitude from the other members of the ITTF who have been nominated, namely Ms. Sally Clark from Great Britain, Mr. Olivier Ducret from Switzerland, Mr. Faisal Asnain from Pakistan and United Kingdom, Mr. Kok Keng Lau from Singapore, Ms. Morenike Obi Farinde from Nigeria, and Ms. Anna Smirnova from Russia. As you have just heard, there is a good gender diversity, which represents men and women in this ITTF Tribunal panel. The diversity might be improved a bit in the next appointments in order to have a better representation of all continents, in particular America, which is not represented yet, but who hopefully will be very soon. So far, we have had only one case that has been published on the ITTF ITTF website. I'm not going to comment on it. Anyone who has got interest in that case can access all the documents on the ITTF website. The ITTF Tribunal is confident that it will provide with the best governance rules and guarantees, which is at the level of the reputation of this outstanding federation, which is the International Tennis Table Federation. It will be a true challenge, but we are all prepared to provide ITTF with our best knowledge and experience in that respect. And as a matter of fact, our best hope is that we will work as little as possible, and the least the ITTF Tribunal works in this in the ITTF environment, and the better we will consider that the ITTF is doing worldwide. Thank you again for your attention. This is all. I believe that I should give the floor either back to Raúl or to Mr. Rödesperer, who is the Rules Committee Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, good evening, good morning to everybody. You know, the ITTF Rules Committee was working and is constantly working with the useful support of our Secretary General and our young legal counsel on propositions and resolutions to AGM and BOD. And it is intended to include amendments in the final presentation at our 2 hybrid meetings in Houston. We, the Rules Committee, have well noted that some special attention this time is given to integrity, good governance, and ethics regulations. By these new regulations, present related rules should be clarified and should be made easier to understand. Let me underline that it is intended to restructure our handbook in the future. I hope that the ITTF Rules Committee will be included in this very ambitious and determined task. Now, let me give back to Raul for the detailed presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rudy, and again, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, you all to this session today. Before going through the details of all the propositions and resolutions for this ITTF 7th conference, allow me please to make a little introduction on what has been the work in governance in the last years. The pandemic, as you know, has brought disruption to the world, but precisely because of the disruption and due to the capacity of adaptation that human beings have, there has been also been some positive aspects that have resulted as we try to mitigate the effects of the crisis. One of the positive aspects, as the ASOIF President Francesco Ricci Vitti said in the IEF Forum 2019, in 2020 in November, was in fact that the digitalization has been accelerated as a consequence of the pandemic. Not so far away, in April 2019, when we were having the last World Table Tennis Championships in the Hungarian capital of Budapest, and we were all literally jumping from meeting to meeting. And in fact, at some point, even some of the persons that were attending the World Championships were calling it the World Championships of Meetings, right? And obviously, this was the result of having only one opportunity per year to be able to meet with the ITTF family. And then most of the delegates were having that sole opportunity to interact with each other. And the pandemic, however, has taught us that there are better ways to do things than the ones we used to put in place. And one of the options we have is this video conferences series. Not only the information is presented progressively, with more time to assimilate the concepts, to engage in discussions, to brainstorm on ideas, but more importantly, it allows every member association to reach the annual general meeting much more prepared. Furthermore, I'm conscious that these meetings are held in the very early morning for some of our members or in the very late night for others. We have tried to be recording all the video conferences and to make them available to you no later than 24 or 48 hours after each of them. At the same time, some committees are also adopting these systems of early meetings, so we can all be better prepared for Houston. On this point, I would like to commend the Nominations Committee, led by Mr. Wahid Oshodi, for the work done in preparation for the AGM, with the vetting of all the candidates for the Executive Committee, the Board of Directors, and the permanent committees. Also, the Para-Table Tennis Committee, led by Konstantina Krota, that had 2 days meeting last week. To other committees as well, as they have been already planning for their meetings to be coming in the next days, giving some ease during the week of the World Championships, and hopefully then everybody can really see table tennis matches. Also, of course, I want to commend the Rules Committee, led by Mr. Rudy Sporrer, and with the assistance of the Professor C.K. Chang as the Deputy Chair. Same as the last year, both of them have provided very valuable input to the text being presented today. We had a very fruitful meeting last Saturday with the attendance and, more importantly, with the interaction of many of the committee members, and I want to thank all of them for that. I want to give a special thanks to our legal counsel, Dylan Ma, who together with Mr. Tenka have been working hard behind the scenes to ensure that our constitutional texts are year by year improved, enhanced, and adapt to the highest standards of modern governance. To my colleague and friend, Mr. Munir Besa, our Members' Relations Director, as an important element of the ITTF workforce in this new ITTF. Because through his department, the ITTF is planning to develop our next set of services to the member associations, assisting them also to reach the highest standards in good governance. If we look back 20 years ago, the ITTF was assisting mainly the continental federations with development funds. 10 years ago, the ITTF started assisting with the events funding for continental championships and other events. The Master Continental Agreements coming in 2020 and 2021 are not only intended to conglomerate the ITTF support to the continental federations, but also to add a third element of support, with specific resources for improving the governance of each and any of our members. Because, as we know, as the English say goes, a chain is as strong as the weakest of the links. Therefore, the ITTF can aim for the highest standards, but if we have a scandal in our sport, whether at the continental or national level, it will still affect negatively the entire table tennis community. Last but not least, my sincere thanks to our executive committee for their trust and confidence, and particularly to our CEO, Steve Lainton. It will be impossible to accomplish all this development and growth without Steve's vision of a greater ITTF. Some may choose to stay small, but staying small means getting smaller every time, because every other international federation tries to grow. Ambition, in the good sense of the word, has made the ITTF grow in this quadrennial and has been done in a significant manner, more than in the previous two quadrennial cycles. And this, despite a big pandemic hitting the world. The Finance Forum held on the 4th of November speaks by itself. You can check the figures in the ITTF audited financial statements and in the video conference that was presented by the ITTF Vice President of Finances, Petra Sorling, and the CFO, Michael Brown. Both resources are available on the ITTF website. I am happy to be given the chance to work in this area of governance for our sport. And even if we not always agree, I want to thank you, Steve, for your confidence. As the former English table tennis champion, Matthew Syed, said in one of his conferences recently, cognitive diversity helps institutions to grow and progress, because it is only through the healthy exchange of ideas with different points of view, backgrounds, and perceptions that we can ensure a better future for our global table tennis community. Before entering into details of the propositions and resolutions, I want to share with you, if you allow me, please, some final reflections. The last year, some associations were questioning the virtual AGM held in September, planned for September 2020. They wanted to postpone to 2021. It is not that we had a crystal ball to know what was going to happen, but the unfortunate cancellation of the Busan 2020 World Championships, planned initially for March 2020, postponed to June, postponed again to September, and further on postponed to March 2021, when finally was cancelled, was proving that it was the right decision. The table tennis world simply cannot stop. Some associations were also questioning why the ITTF was proposing constitutional reforms only 2 years after the reforms of 2018. Well, if we remember the 2018 AGM in Hampstead, at that time, Jordi Serra was consultant and he was helping the ITTF presenting the reforms. He said, and I want to quote his sentence that day, "The new constitution is not a perfect text. For me, it is not a final point, but it is just a new point of departure. We should make it better every year. It is not that we have this new constitution and we will have it for 20 years. No, every year we need to improve. I can already tell you new challenges." Those were the words of Jordi Serra 3 years back. And indeed, we can see the support given in 2020 by the ASOIF and by the International Olympic Committee to our proposed reforms. As Mr. Nestor Tenka has mentioned in his introduction, most of the propositions coming from member associations and the AC have been trying to present in the clearest way today the reforms that passed in 2020. Now, without further introduction, let's dive into the propositions and resolutions that we are going to present, not only from the Executive Committee, but also from member associations, from the Equipment Committee, and from the Athletes Commission. And then, as you know, you have the function of questions and answers. So at any time during the presentation, please feel free to use. So without further more, let me dive into the propositions and resolutions for today. The first of the set of the 22 propositions today is presented by the ITTF Executive Committee, and this is coming to make some enhancements and some adjustments on the Article 11331 on the Constitution. You can see in the screen the text in green as it was proposed by the Executive Committee, And then you can see further enhancements in light blue as they have been discussed with our rules committee during the last weekend meeting, but also in the previous discussion with the chair and the deputy chair of the committee. It's important to clarify that this proposition, although coming from the executive committee, is presented also with the input of the ITTF tribunal that still today has not the ability to present a proposition by themselves, but in the future, hopefully that's the plan they can do. We will go through the questions and answers during at the end of the propositions, and then once again at the end of the resolutions to make the session more dynamic. But please feel free to drop your questions in the video conference, and then we will see hopefully then after, and we will go through. Proposition number 2 is also presented by the ITTF Executive Committee. And in this case, is related also to amendments in the articles on the Constitution, which are mainly about the objectives. Why about the objectives? Well, if we look at the history of the ITTF, this part of the Constitution has not been really very much updated in recent years. However, during the last 20, 30 years, there has been a lot of changes, especially led by the IOC, in the sense of recognizing more and more the figure and the profile of the athletes. That's why you can see that we are not only promoting the athlete mental and well-being, and this is something that has been significantly important in this time of pandemic. Also, for the first time, we are recognizing in our constitution the para table tennis as an important element of our table tennis family, already integrated during 14 years. And then also we have the wording about placing the ITTF officially, as now for the first time is in the constitution, as the responsible for our sport in front of the IOC and the IPC. Last but not least, and also in consultation with the ASOIF, we are proposing to make sure that in the future the ITTF regulations cover the broad scope of the fast, quickly changing and growing world of the esports and the gaming. And that's why the point 11416. In the coming propositions, I will be asking some of my colleagues, particularly our legal counsel, to assist. But nevertheless, during those ones, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A section for further discussion. Proposition number 3 is also presented by the Executive Committee. And basically, it comes to make more practical the implementation of our regulations. In the old system, when we were saying seriously and persistently failing to maintain, basically discussing with the ITTF tribunal, discussing with the integrity unit, it was practically not enforceable. It was very difficult to make sure that this rule could be applicable. The new wording comes to make more possible this option. Proposition number 4, coming also from the Executive Committee, tries to ensure that there is a better alignment of our regulations. And this will be one of the first questions I will ask my colleague, Dylan Ma, to please give you a background on the proposition. Dylan, please, over to you.
Sure, thank you, Raul. And good day and good evening to various members of the ITTF family. So just to elaborate further on what Raul mentioned on Proposition 804, that is to amend this current article of 1.2.3.7. This is the part that is struck out and deleted. That it's because in Proposition A01 that has already been addressed, that the association that is suspended or expelled by way of the AGM or the EGM can appeal that decision to the ITTF tribunal. So the text that is currently written here is no longer necessary. In addition to that, what we want to clarify is that this route of sanction, suspension or expulsion by way of the AGM or the EGM, it's actually in addition and not limited to only this Article 1.2.3. So the new amendment highlighted in green is there to clarify that this is in addition to the other provisions that may apply, for example, under the Code of Ethics and under the ITTF tribunal regulations.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Moving then to the proposition number 5, which is also presented by the Executive Committee. This comes to provide more clarity on the ITTF recognized continents. As you probably know, historically, during the last 15-20 years, there were 6 continents that, although not explicitly recognized in the Constitution, were the ones that ITTF was having interaction with. And in fact, they were signing agreements of cooperation in the last 4 quadrennial cycles. And the presidents of those continental federations were sitting in different entities existing, either the Board of Directors or the All Executive Council, or more recently, the Olympic and Paralympic Commission and the Development Council. After the work done by North American Table Tennis Union and Latin American Table Tennis Union during the last 5 years, particularly with the introduction of joint competitions since 2016, and now having a full program of juniors and seniors and even cadets events together, this proposition comes to clarify the 5 continental federations recognized by the ITTF, and also to make sure also that we align our structure with the more similar ones like the IOC and the IPC. Proposition number 6, also coming from the ITTF Executive Committee, is one of the propositions also coming to align the new the regulations to the result of what was introduced in 2020. And I get back to my colleague Dylan Ma to explain a little bit the background of this proposition.
Thank you, Raul. So to elaborate, the rationale can firstly be found on page 15 of 69 for those of us who have the document in front of you. Otherwise, I will explain briefly. So currently, the regulatory system within the ITTF, as shown in the ITTF handbook, is very much fragmented. So you may have different bodies that is being in charge of different parts of the sports integrity regulations. For example, you may have a body that's in charge for hearing anti-doping matters that may differ from a body that is in charge of dealing with anti-harassment procedures. So because the current regulations, the framework is very fragmented, what we want to do is to consolidate for investigations and commencing prosecution actions to be done by a single body, and that is the ITTF Integrity Unit. We feel that streamlining this into a single body will help parties be clearer about who to go to and who they can expect to hear from in case there are any alleged breaches of the ITTF handbook on their part. So the first reason for Proposition A06 is first to streamline it into a single body. Secondly, it is with regards to the current ITTF Ethics Commission, which is currently in charge of the Code of Ethics. Now, with the Integrity Unit being functional this year, it also needs an independent body, supervisory body, to report to and oversee its strategy and operations. Now, instead of having the Ethics Commission to perform similar and overlapping duties with the ITTF Integrity Unit, we decide to expand the scope of duties of the Ethics Commission beyond just the Code of Ethics to include the other parts, such as the doping matters, harassment matters. And in that regard, we do away with overlapping roles, and instead we enlarge the responsibilities of the Ethics Commission and to supervise the ITTF Integrity Unit. And with that, we propose to rename the ITTF Ethics Commission to something that is more appropriate, such as the ITTF Integrity Board. So that is the second point for this proposition. The third one is to clarify and provide more information about the governance of the ITTF Integrity Unit. As you know, in the 2020 AGM, that was when the proposition was passed to constitutionally establish the Integrity Unit. But at that time, there was no framework or clear picture of how the ITTF Integrity Unit would structure itself and what its procedures would be. So this year, with this annex in Proposition A06, you'll find the ITTF Integrity Regulations, which will deal with two major parts. The first part is the governance and the organization of the ITTF Integrity Unit. And this is the part where they talk about the composition of the ITTF Integrity Board, the roles and responsibilities of the ITTF Head of Integrity and other integrity officers. And the second part deals with the specific investigations, intelligence, and disciplinary actions taken on the part of the ITTF Integrity Unit. So these are the three main parts of the three main rationale for this quite lengthy Proposition A06. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dylan. And then, yes, as you say, it's a length proposition which includes also the necessary annex with the integrity regulations. But as we all feel, I mean, as we try to get a more professional and more robust wording and text, it's important to have this segregation and to have a specific set of regulations, so we have more clarity in the future. Again, please feel free to drop your questions on the chat, and following the summary of the 22 propositions, we will make a first stop to go through all of them. Proposition number 7 is also related to changes in the structure of our handbook. All of you, I think, are familiar already with the electoral set of electoral appointment regulations presented as guidelines for 2021, now intended to become rules. But please, if you can elaborate on that, Dylan, I will appreciate it.
Sure, Raul. I think this one is slightly more straightforward. It is basically, as you've mentioned, to formally introduce and incorporate the electoral and appointment regulations into the ITTF handbook. As you know, we've issued this year for in time for this year's election, but at this current status, it is not part of the ITTF handbook yet. So we feel that it is time to put this into the ITTF handbook formally, so that our appointment and election processes for important bodies such as the Executive Committee, the Permanent Committee, or Integrity Board, etc., can be guided and strengthened by this set of regulations.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Dylan. And then again, we have accompanying to the proposition number 7, we have the annex, the new chapter, which will be incorporated if hopefully the General Assembly, the members support this proposition. Proposition number 8, and this comes to include 2 additional members on the ITTF Executive Committee. And following the discussions, the meetings we have with the Rules Committee on Saturday, it was felt it was better to restructure, including some numbering, as you can see on the screen, to have more clarity, as it was not very clear for all the members of the Rules Committee what was the intention. And basically, as you can see, the idea is to try to ensure that in the future, there is 1 representative from the World Table Tennis and 1 representative from the ITTF Foundation in the ITTF Executive Committee. What is the rationale? What is the reason behind this proposition from the Executive Committee? Mainly to ensure that the ITTF in the future can have some independent members that can bring expertise from areas outside the traditional source, which have been for 91 years member associations delegates, and then more recently the Athletes Commission chair, and even more recently the addition of an IOC member. It's not a secret that many international federations have already incorporated independent directors in one or another way. A few years ago, this was a discussion on the table. It was not accepted, or better to say, it was there were some reluctances to accept. So maybe we feel that this way of having 1 representative from the foundation and 1 from table tennis, 2 entities very close to the ITTF, as in fact they are part of the group, hopefully this can help for people to better accept the proposition. Proposition number 9, and this proposition comes to make a new numbering and clarification on the Continental Federation's status. You probably remember that for the last 15-20 years, a president of a Continental Federation could not sit on the Executive Committee. This was a change introduced in the regulations of the IETF at some point by some previous leaderships. And although the intentions were not very clear to us when we reflect on the change today, what is true is that looking at other international federations, most of them, they have in fact the continental presidents de facto members of the executive bodies, or at least they are eligible, but they are never declared not eligible. So at least this propositions comes to ensure that there is not a restriction for continental presidents to be able to be members of the ITTF Executive Committee. Once again, please feel free to do your questions. We will try to go through all of them one by one. Proposition number 10. Again, on this point, I would like to ask my colleague Dylan Mas, it is more legal technical, to provide some background. Dylan, please.
Sure, thank you, Raul. So this addition is quite straightforward. It is basically to clarify any doubt that the powers of the executive committee is to be exercised by way of a simple majority of the executive committee, unless the ITTF handbook expressly provides that a certain position, whether be it a vice president or a president, has specific powers. Generally, this is to clarify that the powers vested in the executive committee is to be exercised by way of the executive committee decided by simple majority. And then it further clarifies that if the executive committee decides to delegate its powers to any individual person or groups of persons within ITTF, it may always revoke that delegation of power. So that is what this proposition is trying to say.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dylan, for the clarifications on that. Proposition number 11. Also, this comes to clarify duties of the executive committee. And again, following the meeting we had with the rules committee, you have some blue light enhancements. Please, Dylan, if you can elaborate on this.
Sure, Raul. So these are actually the duties that are commonly expected of the highest executive body of an organization, whether it being an organization from the International Sports Federation or sometimes as a general companies. Some of our listeners here attendees here may be directors of companies. They may be familiar with directors' duties. So many of these provisions, such as the duty to act in good faith, the duty to exercise due care and diligence, these are fundamental duties expected of a director of a company. So similarly, a lot of these duties exist in law, whether expressly or impliedly. But for clarity, we decided to put it into the handbook just to make sure that it's clear for readers and for future executive members as well as members of the ITTF family.
Thank you again. Thank you, Dylan, for that. And now going to the proposition number 12, also presented by the executive committee and also with a remark from the rules committee revision that we had last Friday. This goes also to clarify about meetings and proceeding of business. Please, Dylan, I think it's also very suitable for you.
Sure. So I think these additions are just in time as each of our governing organs become more professionalized. For example, one would see that in the ITTF tribunal regulations that was passed last year's AGM, there was some basic guidelines on the quorum and meetings and organization of the ITTF tribunal. So with that being passed, we felt that it was good to have some basic structure on how the meetings of the executive committee can also be clarified. So certain things like the quorum, conducting of meetings through remote means by way of telephone or video conferences, motions being not needing to be in a physical meeting, and things can be communicated via electronic communications. So I don't think this is anything that is very revolutionary. So it's something that is just another step in terms of clarifying and enhancing our handbook.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dylan. Going then now to the proposition number 13. This also comes to clarify how is the process to fill vacancies when they occur. And as you probably know, there is always, especially for those like oneself, we are not English speaking as the first language, we have always the misunderstanding what is a nomination, what is an appointment. This text comes to clarify that any vacancies occurring in the Executive Vice President of Finances position or the Deputy Presidency position have to be appointed by majority of the executive committee. So allowing no room for interpretation, a crystal clear definition, but also, of course, clarifying as well that any vacancies that happen in any of the vice presidencies, because if we have a vacancy on the deputy presidency or in the executive vice presidency of finances, and we move one of the EC members, automatically you will still have a position vacant. Then this is the way to fill in the future, making also reference to the extraordinary general assemblies. Proposition 14 also comes to clarify an area of the regulations that was actually never existing and never contemplated, probably because we were never facing a potential situation like that. On this, please, Dylan, if you can assist me to elaborate on the rationale and the intention of this proposition.
Sure. So this addition of Article 1547, it is to provide, is to address two particular situations. Firstly, is regarding the suspension of any executive committee member. And second is the removal, of course, being more serious than just a suspension of an executive committee member. So one can see from the first part of the article under 15471. So that part deals with suspension of executive committee member. So you can see that the requirement is also quite high. It's by way of 2/3 majority. And the conditions are stated in 1.5.4.7.1.1 and the next sub point in point 2. So whereas for removal, that is covered under the provision of Article 15473.1 and point 2. And below that, it talks about due process. So before any suspension or removal, the executive committee must be executive committee member who is subject to that must receive written notice and be have the opportunity to provide their case to the executive committee.
Thank you again, Dylan, for that. We go now to the proposition number 15, which is also presented by the ITTF Executive Committee, and is basically the result of the creation of the two entities we created last year, IETF Tribunal and IETF Integrity Unit. It will not be fair, really, if we create these entities and they have not the freedom of speech or the freedom to and the ability to ask or request to the ITTF General Assembly when they feel that there has reforms that have to be made on the ITTF Constitution. For this year, as you can see, the ITTF is presenting, the ITTF Executive Committee is presenting to the AGM and to the Board of Directors on behalf of the Tribunal and on behalf of the Integrity Unit some of the amendments they have proposed, but for the future, for 2022 onwards, the idea is that they are able to present themselves their own propositions. Proposition number 17, which is presented by the Moroccan Table Tennis Association. We have been informed last Saturday, actually 2 days ago, that Morocco has the intention to withdraw this proposition. The background given by Mr. Hadji Al-Monkid, the president of the association, is that he has the feeling that some members' associations have not understood the intention he had with this proposition, and he would like to come back to the ITTF General Assembly in the future with a maybe more elaborated proposal. Proposition number 18. In this point, I am not sure if we have already with us our chair of the AFLIS Commission, Zoran Primorac, and if he has raised the hand and if we can accept him as panelist, Janil, let me check. Is Zoran on the room? Attendees. Zoran, yes, yeah, allowed to talk. Okay. So welcome, Zoran, to the video conference 7. First of all, I have to say thank you very much for joining us, because we know you are just coming back from matches in the Russian league. So just landed in Croatia, as far as I know. Thank you very much for joining us today, Zoran. And we have in the screen the first of the two propositions your AFLIS Commission is presenting to the IETF General Assembly. I would like, please, if you can elaborate a little bit on the first one, the one that has the Declaration of Rights and Responsibilities for the AFLIS, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Raul. I don't know if camera is doing well. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and good day and good night to everyone. Good evening. Yes, this is proposed by the Athletes Commission, but it's in line with the IOC recommendation, because the Athletes' Rights and Responsibility Declaration was developed by the athletes for the athletes, and you have inside the athletes' rights and athletes' responsibilities, which you could see in the online, and also it will be presented during the our AGM. But this Universal Declaration was endorsed by many different sporting bodies, as you could see in proposition, namely ENOC, ASOIF, Pan Sport Athletes Forum, but also one of the famous Olympic committees like Australian Olympic Committee, New Zealand Olympic Committee, and so on. I think this is a good that also ITTF is a part of this family who adopted this declaration and the responsibilities and rights of the athletes. And I think it's we will show also good governance, that we are in line with the IOC recommendations, and this is for sure the good thing for the ITTF and also for the athletes.
Thank you, Soran. Thank you for your words. And in fact, we can confirm that the Executive Committee, following the reception of this proposition, which came on the 26th of August, had a meeting on the 16th of September. As you know, the Executive Committee presents, same like the member associations, all the propositions and resolutions 3 months in advance. And then between the 3 months in advance reception and the 2 months in advance publication is when the Executive Committee go through all the propositions and resolutions. I am happy and pleased to report that the Executive Committee is favorable to support this proposition from the Athletes Commission, because as we said on the proposition A02, it is time for the ITTF to update our objectives to make sure that players and athletes play a more predominant role in our sport, and this will ensure that there is not only more presence, but also to pay more attention to our athletes community. So I will still ask you, Soran, to stay with us a little bit more when we go through the proposition number 19, also presented by the Athletes Commission, the second and last of the propositions coming from our Athletes Commission, and is in relation to increasing from 1 to 2 the number of athletes in the Executive Committee. And Soran, please, if you can elaborate on that.
Thank you, Raul. Yes, I mean, it is IOC recommended and recognized that the athletes are core of our sport, and also the IOC International Olympic Committee recommends that the athletes should be more involved in decision-making bodies. Also, this was in line of that Athletes Commission, together with the support of Executive Committee, we recommend that we include 2 members of Athletes Commission inside the EC from 2 different genders. Also, like this, we will increase the presentation of the athletes inside the EC, and also with the gender diversity, it will be better for sure to have more female representatives, because as you see, as a candidates for EC, we have lack of female candidates, and also like this, we were sure that females, there will be more represented inside the Executive Committee. As you see in the rationale that already 9 Olympic Sport Federation have also at least 2 athletes in their executive committees, like World Athletics, like International Tennis Federation, Triathlon Union, and so on. I think this is a good proposal, because often the decisions are highly affected on the athletes, and many times directly or indirectly consider the athletes. I would say like ranking, like tournaments, like calendar or equipment, and I think it's very important that the athletes are part, and the voice of the athletes will be highly represented inside the executive decision bodies. Now we have like 10% only inside the Athletes Commission, athletes inside the EC. For example, in the US Olympic Committee, we have like 33% of the athletes are represented inside the US Olympic Committee. Like this, we will ensure that the athletes are more involved, they will be more engaged in decisions considering our sport, and I highly recommend that we adopt this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soran. And yes, we can confirm that, as you have well said, I mean, many national Olympic committees, especially those are having more modern standards of governance, are increasing progressively the number of athletes in the executive bodies, because at the end of the day, the more diversity we add to our governing bodies, the better experience it will be overall for the benefit of the sport. So also it's good to see that the ITTF Executive Committee is supportive to this proposition from the Athletes Commission. With this, we now move to the proposition of the Swedish Table Tennis Association. This is a proposition to create the so-called, better to say, to merge in the so-called Olympic and Paralympic Commission into a continental council. And we were contacting one by one the associations that have presented propositions or resolutions to this General Assembly to see whether they wanted to make a public statements or not. In this case, the Swedish Table Tennis Association has presented a written statement, so please allow me to read on their behalf. They say, a written statement from STTA, the Swedish table tennis is a strong believer in the continental factor as an important part in building a new and stronger ITTF body. We are of the opinion that certain programs and events delivery, including the calendar, must be better aligned in the future. The intention with this proposition is to create the best possible meeting platform for quality input and related decisions. The body should first and foremost secure the proper continental input for strategical decisions related to the world title events and the international calendar, with the table tennis in the Olympic and Paralympic Games included. The ITTF Continental Council shall replace the ITTF Future Events Working Group, as well as the Olympic and Paralympic Commission, and also absorb the Development and Continental Council responsibilities. On behalf of the Swedish Table Tennis Association, Thomas Busa, Secretary General. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Swedish Table Tennis Association. And again, we will keep collecting questions from when we finish with the propositions to make a first stop. Proposition number 21 is coming from the Equipment Committee. And I am not sure if we have our chair of the Equipment Committee, Mr. Paul Shields, with us today here in the room. Let me see in the participants list. And if not, no, we don't see him asking, at least raising the hand. Then, if not, no, he's not with us. Then anyway, the proposition, as you know, propositions for the Chapter 2 require 3/4 majority, so there is a higher level of approval or support from the General Assembly, and comes to define with more precision the material that can be used on the handle of the racket. You can see on the rational the comments introduced. I will prefer in this case, if Mr. Shields is not here, to not make any comments on his behalf, and eventually he can comment on the day of the General Assembly. The last of the 22 propositions is coming from the Iran Table Tennis Association. And in this case, it's a proposition to amend the doubles rule. Discussing with the Iranian Table Tennis Association, they suggested that the member of the Rules Committee, Mrs. Simin Essayem, will be today with us making a small talk before we introduce the video. So allow me please to invite Mrs. Simin, ITTF Rules Committee member, to explain about. Mrs. Simin?
Hello, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. If we go to the service rules, Rule 263 about service rules for the doubles, it says the ball shall touch successively in the right half court of servers and receiver. If we extend this service rule by, or it shall touch successively the left hand court of server and receiver, then we can give advantage to the right hand players to allow them more flexibility to use of their best position for project their service as left hand players. And also, if we look at the other rule, 266, it says it is the responsibility for the player to serve so that the umpire or assistant umpire can be satisfied that he or she complies with the requirements of the laws and either may decide that a service is incorrect. So we, in some of the tournaments, especially in some stages, qualification stages, we have just one umpire, not assistant umpire. Then again, we can give to all the players to have more flexibility for their best position for projecting or starting a rally. So if it's possible, Raul, to show a video to all two, it's appreciated.
Yes, we are going to play the video now. And just in case, if the video cannot be listened from my computer, I will ask one of my colleagues to play, but let's hope it works well. Let's try.
Iran Table Tennis Federation has a suggestion to make some changes in services in double games. Left-handed players make service from this side, and we want to let the right-handed players to make service diagonally from this side of the table.
Before moving to the resolutions, let's make a stop here. We know 22 propositions, a lot to digest, but actually that's also one of the reasons to have these earlier video conferences. So rather than having just one discussion in the day of the AGM, especially knowing that some of our members will not be able to join us, especially knowing that in some countries of the world, the AGM will start at 1 or 2 or even 3 a.m. in the morning, it's good to have the discussions today. We will go first to some of the questions and answers we have already answered, because it's good maybe to comment on them, and then we will go through the open questions before moving to the resolutions. The first was more a technical question on whether the possibilities to interact compared to the meeting of the ITTF Foundation. The ITTF Foundation webinar actually was not a webinar, it was set up as a meeting. And the problem we have with the meetings is the inability to control the microphones and the interactions of the people. So obviously when you have more than 10, 20, 25 attendees, it's much better to do in a webinar format. Nevertheless, we try to make sure that all the comments, all the questions are well presented in the article and in the video posted in the 24-48 hours after the meeting. Then we have a question from Mr. Innocent Bahati in regards to how we plan to develop or to pay more attention to para-table tennis in the future of the ITTF. You can see if you move to the chat, to the questions and answers, depending on the device you have, computer or telephone. If you are using a telephone, maybe you need to scroll some of the screens. And you can see that the ITTF had an evolution on the integration of para-table tennis, which was a sport belonging to the International Paralympic Committee until 2007. In 2007, became part of the ITTF and was created the so-called para-table tennis division. But it was felt that there was a lack of integration. That's why from 2017, it became a committee. And in fact, we have seen already some very successful integrations of the para-table tennis activities, particularly in the area of high performance and development. Recently, as we mentioned at the introduction, Konstantina Krota, the head of the para-table tennis committee, had a meeting with all the committee members, and they were outlining how to move forward in the future. In fact, this year in the board of directors, we are happy and pleased to say, maybe to even to announce, if the article is not yet out, that the ITTF has received 4 bids for the 2022 World Para-Table Tennis Championships. This will be decided at the ITTF board of directors on the 27th of November in Houston. So we feel really that we are going in the right direction for the integration, but also for the promotion of para-table tennis. And going now to the open questions, we have here a question, I think it's from Paul Kyle, because it comes as anonymous attendee, but I think Paul is asking if the proposition A05, the proposition about the continental federations, has been discussed with members of the association and the impact. Well, in fact, Paul, the creation of the Pan American Table Tennis Confederation is nothing new. It was a desire existing for more than 2 decades in the table tennis in the Americas. People like Sherry Shoroslam, the former president of the North American Table Tennis Union, and Miguel Ángel Delgado, president of the Latin American Table Tennis Union at that time, they both tried to merge and to make joint activities in 2001, 2004. Unfortunately, at that time, it was not possible. A new attempt to make joint work started in 2015 in Toronto during the Pan American Games, with the interaction at that time of the 2 presidents, Tony Kissenhofer from Canada and Juan Vila from Latin America. This resulted, as mentioned before, in a memorandum of understanding that started with the Pan American Junior Championships in 2016, and then from 2017 onwards, a full program of juniors and seniors, and also the Pan American Cup. In 2019, there was the first ever General Assembly of the Pan American Table Tennis Confederation, which has been recognized by the Pan Am Sports Organization as the official entity for governing the table tennis in the Americas. And following this 26th of June General Assembly in Cancun, Mexico, 2019, there was a subsequent one in 2020, on the 26th of November last year, where the first president was elected. So I think this hopefully responds your question, but if not, of course, feel free to ask us, or even to take the floor on the 24th of November during the AGM. Another question we have seen here, and I guess it's also from Paul, because also says anonymous attendee, it says if how the representatives of the Foundation World Table Tennis will be chosen. I guess this refers to the proposition related to the increase of the executive committee to have 2 more positions. Obviously, this is something we have to come back to the executive committee and to ask them, as they are the presenters, what is the model, what is the way in which they would like to do it in the future. But nevertheless, as we have today with us as panelists, both the Vice President of the Executive Committee, Mr. Tenka, and also the CEO, please feel free to jump at any time I am saying something not very, very accurate. Then Mr. Bahati, okay, comments on the response, and greetings from Rwanda. No, thank you to you, Mr. Bahati, and thank you for following the conferences, as I have seen you have been very, very active on that. Then Swiss Table Tennis is asking, okay, this is coming from George Silver-Smith. Swiss Table Tennis is asking that at the AGM, the proposition A20 will be put forward to be voted before A08 and A09. Well, thank you for your note, George. This is something for the Executive Committee and to the chair of the AGM to consider. As you know, this is their propositions, and then we have to ask them, but thank you, your note is well taken. Mr. Bahati, yes, from development, okay. Michael Gay, okay, now we have ready the next speakers that will allow us to, so they will participate in the interactions on the resolutions. But I would like just to ask once more if there is any further questions in the previous propositions. And if not, when introducing the new ones, I will try to put all the open questions back in the chat. Sometimes we cannot multitask very well. So going to the first of the resolutions, a resolution presented by the ITTF Executive Committee. And this, as you can see, is intended to establish a working group to really realign and reorganize the handbook. You may have heard already today both the Rules Committee Chair, Rudy Sporrer, and also the ITTF Legal Counsel, Dylan Ma, that because of the subsequent or the progressive amendments, changes, and reforms we have had in the last couple of years in the Constitution, probably it is time to make a comprehensive review. Just to mention a few aspects, para-table tennis regulations have never been integrated in the handbook as they should be. Or for example, when we are adding new chapters, eventually maybe we should consider having annexes with a glossary of terms to be used across the whole document, because this exists already for new chapters that the WADA code, like the WADA code, chapter 5, as we basically took the template from WADA, or as the recently created chapter 8 from the ITTF Tribunal, which was also incorporated, trying to make a more legal text. No doubt that if we can create this working group, and if we can ask the future executive committee to give this mandate and to ensure that this work can start quickly, hopefully we can have some good work done on time for the next AGM. Because we have to keep in mind also that politics are always there, And normally it's better to make reforms on the first year of a cycle after the elections, that when the election cycles are coming to an end. As some people try to perceive that the changes are more political than practical, at least I can tell all of you that from this administration, we always try to make sure that the changes are reflecting the needs that we listen, the needs that we see in this house. And we are speaking today from the Maison des Sports in Lausanne, in Switzerland, and try to really grab what the IOC or the Olympic movement and what all of the Association of Summer Olympic Federations are requesting us. Resolution number 2, actually, I think I swapped the order. Apologies for that. Resolution number 2 was the one I was mentioning about the creation of the working group. But in fact, we have a first resolution, resolution number 1, which is intended to put forward at the beginning of the AGM. Why this resolution? Well, as you know, and it's not a secret, so we can speak quite openly today, there has been many persons and even member associations which have been speaking quite open against the ITTF direction in recent times. In fact, we saw the last year, as we mentioned before, how some associations were even trying to block having the General Assembly being held on the 28th of September. This year also there were some rumors coming from some association, actually one particular association, saying the AGM cannot be held in a hybrid mode. In precaution and having this being seen as a potential threat to all the member associations, delegates that could not travel to Houston for many different reasons, we consulted with Dr. Francois Carrard, who, as you probably know, is not only a former Director General of the IOC, but also he is leading one of the top firms in Switzerland in sports, and he confirmed the legality of our General Assembly. But nevertheless, the Executive Committee puts forward this resolution on the sentiment, on the confidence that the member associations will want to express their democratic will to have an AGM, whether remotely or whether physically in Houston, because this is the right and this is the obligation of our members. And those who want to block the democracy, simply they cannot win. Then resolution number 3 is proposed by Table Tennis England. I think we have with us today Sarah Sutcliffe, CEO of Table Tennis England. So please, Sarah, very much welcome. Thank you also for your work in the Rules Committee during the last 2 years, and particularly last Saturday. And if you want, please, to comment on this resolution number 3.
Good afternoon, Raoul, and table tennis colleagues all over the world. I hope you are all very well today. This resolution we've put forward from England, I think addresses or seeks to address an issue that we've seen arise in a number of sports. And when we looked into it, we felt that the ITTF regulations relating to clothing in competition are too prescriptive for the current environment. And so we are seeking to ask the ITTF executive to undertake a wide-ranging consultation with all the relevant stakeholders and to come back to a future AGM with proposals to, I think, make the clothing regulations more inclusive for all genders, for all religions, for anybody who wishes, for whatever reason, to wear less revealing clothing, more comfortable clothing. So we hope that you'll be able to support this resolution, which just asks the executive to undertake a consultation and to come back with its own proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And actually, we have to say, we probably, some of you will remember the fashion contest the ITTF had almost 12 years ago. I think that is good that now we have this resolution on the table, because it's good to make an analysis. Again, from time to time, really, we need to look at our ways of running the activities and our ways to promote the sport. And we want to thank Table Tennis England for this interesting resolution. Resolution number 4 and resolution number 5 are very similar in nature. Resolution number 4 is presented by the German Table Tennis Association. Resolution number 5 is presented by the Swiss Table Tennis Association. They would like to present both together. So in this moment, I would like to ask Mr. Michael Geiger and George Silver-Smith to see who is going to speak first. I see already Mr. George Silver-Smith has raised the hand. And I don't know if Mr. Michael Geiger will do. 1 second. Good afternoon, George. And I don't know if...
Good afternoon, Raul. Good afternoon, friends all over the world. Beside the points already mentioned in the rationale, let me give you some more facts. The actual ranking is in a disadvantage for a large majority of the players worldwide and don't allow young players to reach the top. Even more, it makes players to stop playing in international competitions and for national teams. From our women national team, the number 2 and number 3 stopped playing this year, not seeing any chance to improve their ranking, completely demotivated. This has nothing to do with the ongoing pandemic, only with the actual ranking system and the possibilities to participate in international competitions, namely the WTT events. Continental championships, including qualification events, have to count for the world ranking. When limiting the numbers of countries eligible for the WTTC, it was always said from the actual leaders that ITTF doesn't want to have 120 or some more national associations participating in the World Championships. They want that all 226 national associations will participate. But now these qualification matches are not counting for the world ranking and are very expensive to participate. The world ranking must be based as well on the ranking of the opponent, but because it's not logic that if you win against a highly ranked player, that this is has the same value like when you, for example, just play against a junior playing his first competition. Never ever a simulation has been made how the actual ranking would look like when the actual world ranking would have been in place since 2017. So then you really and obviously can see the differences and the disadvantage of the actual system. And last but not least, the ratification of the BOD guarantees that it will be in the best interest of ITTF. Therefore, Swiss Table Tennis strongly recommend all national associations to be in favor for the resolutions A05, A06, and A07 to ensure that your players, whatever level they have, will have a chance to reach their dreams. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jörg. I think Mr. Matthias Batoya, the Secretary General of the German Table Tennis Association, will also speak about these propositions.
Yeah, thank you, Raul. Hello to everyone, and I hope you all are well in these uncertain times. I just would like to make some amendments to the words from Georg Silberschmidt in the proposition resolution number 4. You will see a small difference to the one from Switzerland. It's the last paragraph. So we also would like to ask that the number of mandatory events for the players will be reduced. The reason for this is that we would like to reduce the burden on the players. And if they are not able to play in all mandatory events up to now, they would be punished with 0 points in the world ranking. So we would like to add this again. In general, we are in favor of a world ranking system which also takes into account the strengths of the opponent you have won against. We feel this is very important because with the current system where you gain your points for the round you reach, it is the same whether you win against a number 10 player or top 10 player in the world, or if you have a walkover with no match, the same number of points is gained. So this is on proposition resolution number 4 and 5. And if we look at number 6, we all have followed the Olympic Games in Tokyo. The Games are the most important event of our sport. For many of us associations, the financial support also depends on the participation or the result of the Games. And what is also very important in the public perception, Olympic Games, World and then Continental Championships are the most important events, and the outstanding role of these events should also be reflected in the world rankings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthias, and thank you, Jörg. And on this point, I would like to see if there are any further comments or questions about any of those resolutions from any of the panelists or also from any of the member associations that have been joining us today. Gabor, our competition director, please, Gabor.
Thank you very much, Raul. Yes, first of all, I would like to welcome you all. I would like to give you a brief update on the competitions department's positions regarding these three proposed resolutions, the A40, the 05, and the 06. First of all, thank you very much, Georg. Thank you very much, Matthias, for expressing your opinion here and putting forward these three resolutions. As you all know, it's really important for us to receive feedback, not just from you, but from all the member associations. And I would like to urge everyone that in case you have any kind of feedback or idea, please do not hesitate contacting us anytime. Our doors are always open. Before jumping on my rationale, I would like to share with you my general feeling and the general opinion of the competition department. You will see in the coming minutes that we are having some issues or some technical issues and also legislative issues around these three resolutions. Therefore, at the end of my speech, I would like to ask all of you not to approve these resolutions at this stage. We will take into considerations everything what the two member associations proposed, and in the future, naturally, we will discuss it deeply, and in case any of the points they proposed meant to develop the rankings, then we will do so. Since my time is limited, therefore, right now I wouldn't like to go into legislative matters. As far as I'm concerned, our technical commissioner, Mr. Graham Ireland, will share a comment with you if he didn't do so in the chat box, and he is going to elaborate more the legislative questions around these three regulations. As it was already mentioned, one of the most significant change the first two resolutions aim to do is the decision-making process around the world ranking. According to the rationale we have received from Swiss and German table tennis associations, their goal is to put the decisions in the hand of elected officials, the members of the BOD. Now, before reacting on this, I would like to give you a really brief update on how the world ranking process is actually working and how it looks like. Right now, the executive committee of the ITTF has a working group called World Ranking Working Group. This World Ranking Working Group consists of 7 individuals, 4 elected officials, the ITTF president, the technical commissioner, and 2 members of the Ethics Commission, and 3 staff members, the project director of the CEO, the World Ranking Manager, and the ITTF Competitions Director. It is also important to highlight that the World Ranking Working Group has a very, very limited decision-making rights. The World Ranking Working Group is only proposing regulatory changes to the executive committee of the ITTF. And every time the World Ranking Working Group proposes something, the EC is taking all the factors into consideration before they are making a final decision. And publishing of the world ranking updates and world ranking regulatory changes could be only possible after EC approval. So eventually, the elected officials of the ITTF are making the decision in regard of the world ranking. The World Ranking Working Group has, as I told you already, a very limited range of decision-making rights. Just to give you an example, in a situation of a late cancellation, when a player is canceling after the cancellation deadline and the ranking penalty should be forced on him or her, then this decision goes to the World Ranking Working Group, and this working group is making the decision whether they are accepting the rationale of the player, why she or he canceled after the deadline or not. This is, I can say, the highest level of decision-making right of the World Ranking Working Group. Furthermore, I would like to highlight that in the previous months, more or less due to the COVID-19, the ranking regulation got updated 6 times. As I told you, this has not happened because the ranking was incorrect, but because it was a living and it is a living and breathing document. And we, the ITTF, the World Ranking Working Group and the Executive Committee are always trying to adjust it time to time to ensure that the athletes, the fans, and the other stakeholders are having the best possible ranking solutions on their tables. Now, not to go completely against the rationale what Matthias and Georg already shared with you, but granting this decision-making right to the BOD would create a situation when this kind of rapid decision-making is no longer an option. So, for example, just to tell you an example, right now, the ranking transition is frozen. In case this resolution is going through and we need to make a quick decision in regard of the unfreezing or further freeze of the ranking, then we will face with a situation when this decision could be only accepted in Chengdu in May or June during the World Championships by the BOD. I don't think this would be a very ideal situation for majority of the member associations, since the participation on WTT events, the seeding of the World Championships, the seeding of the WTT events, all based on the ITTF World Ranking. Now, in regard of the first part of the first 2 resolutions, as Georg and Matthias already highlighted, basically we would go back to the so-called previous system called ILO. This is what is called head-to-head in the resolutions. Without saying that the ILO system is not good or is better than the current one, or the current one is better, it's very important to highlight that the new ranking was created around certain principles. And this previous, let's say, calculating model goes against these principles. It is changing one of the most important principles of the current ranking, and it leaves other principles in place. Now, as you can imagine, it's like a thing which is not fitting into the system to just go into the system and disrupt other things, and it will end up having it, and we will end up having a disrupted ranking system, which will eventually not work anymore properly. Actually, some of the parts of these resolutions are going back also to the 2020 World Ranking regulations. Then just a very short rationale on why we changed the team rules from 2020 to 2021. Our most important rationale is that we have realized that some of the players, they don't have the same opportunities as the others. It didn't matter what their level were or how much they progressed in the previous times. During team events, even excellent players might never compete in the World Table Tennis Championships right now because they just don't have enough good players in their team. And of course, with these kind of proposals, what Germany and Switzerland made, these players still won't have any kind of chance to compete on these team events. So returning to the 2020 regulations could directly harm the smaller and less developed nations, as their players gets punished in the rankings. It could stop their progression and limit their chance to improve their team world ranking. We have also realized that the previous world ranking regulations opened some possibilities. Let's call them strategies, so that players and team could preserve their ranking points. And it happened in the past, not once, not twice. And we received feedbacks from the Athletes Commission that time that we should work out different ranking regulations and different proposals to change this kind of, let's say, this tactical possibility. Now, regarding the A7, we didn't really talk much about the A7. Again, I would like to go back to our principles. So we wanted to create, and this is what the AGM actually approved 2 years ago. We wanted to create a dynamic ranking system, and the Grand Smash is the cornerstone of this dynamic ranking system. We are not saying that the Olympics or the World Championships are not the most important events, just important to highlight that the Grand Smash was designed to be the top tier of the events. It should happen every year 3 or 4 times. And with the current ranking system, we are expecting that the Grand Smash will refresh the rankings more often. It will allow players to progress or drop in the ranking, to be honest, according to their performance. And on the contrary, the Olympic Games only take place every 4 years. The participation on the Olympic Games are limited by continental quotas. The World Championships, the individual World Championships, happens every 2 years. And we have right now a similar quota restriction in place. Now, again, the importance of the Olympic Games and the WTTC is acknowledged by awarding the same amount of points. We are also aiming to award the same amount of points to the WTT Grand Smash because its periodicity would be, let's say that the ranking points would be increased. It could... Sorry, Raul?
Sorry, it was by accident, sorry.
So, sorry, so just going back on the WTT Grand Smash. So we would like to award the same amount, or we awarded the same amount of ranking points to the WTT Grand Smash because 3-4 times a year, it could refresh our rankings. It could give the players opportunity to progress in the ranking, as I told you, or drop whenever they are playing the Grand Smashes. And of course, this time I wouldn't like to talk about the media exposure, the increased prize money, why these events are going to be really the marquee level of events in the future. Because I already ran out of time, I would really appreciate if you would accept my rationale regarding these 3 resolutions. Naturally, in case you have any further questions to us regarding our rationale, we are happy to answer. Also, we are having technical documents which is summarizing the rationale of the competitions department and the technical commissioner. We are always happy to share this document with any of the member associations interested to read it. And as I told at the beginning of my small rationale, in case you have any further questions, please do not hesitate emailing to us. We are also happy to have a meeting with you whenever it is suitable for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabor. Thank you for this comprehensive explanation. In the meantime, we were having this debate on world ranking matters. We have got a few interventions from the assistant of the ITTU president, Mr. Levitin. So if you allow me, I would like to suggest as following. We are now almost 1 hour and a half of discussion, and of course, this is a sensitive matter. Probably the best will be that in the future, there is made a seminar on world ranking, as it was evident through this interaction that this is something of interest for the people. However, this session today is more related to governance matters, right? And I think it also will not be good to deprive the people from the opportunity to discuss on that. And then coming back to the first of the questions not answered from Mr. Levitin, the first one is the members of the commercial entities cannot be part of the executive committee, as they should be controlled by executive committee members and report to them. And of course, Mr. Levitin, this depends on the model of governance the ITTF want to have and the decisions the AGM and the governing bodies wish to take. One example that everybody knows is FIBA, the so-called probably the second largest international federation after FIFA. And as many people may know, the NBA commissioner, actually the major commercial entity in the world of basketball, actually he's sitting as an independent director in the executive board of FIBA. So what I want to say is that different models of governance, different structures, it's not up to us, especially up to me as staff to decide. the executive committee has put a proposition on the floor, and it's of course for the executive committee and you, the members of the national associations, and of course the continental presidents to discuss and debate and decide what is the way forward you want for the future, right? A second comment from Mr. Kosicin is he would like to support the resolution from Germany and Switzerland as they are aiming to be developed and a wider range of athletes being involved in ranking points. I guess this also should be maybe commented in cooperation with the comments of the technical commissioner, which I am not sure if Mr. Pelleggi has raised, but basically the ITTF technical commissioner mentions that the ranking is an operational matter, and when often it needs quick reactions to change, and the world ranking ropes is not making decisions. This has been already commented, but it's the executive committee who is composed of elected officials, but nevertheless, food for thoughts, as I think you say in English. One more comment from Mr. Levitin is ITTF group has not received the approval of the AGM yet, so I think it is not the right to include the representatives into the executive committee before the approval. And again, fair comment, like all the comments you make, and nevertheless, the propositions are there because propositions are there to be voted in favor or against, and it's at the end of the day the democratic will of the members that will define the destiny and the direction for the ITTF in the future. Then the last question from Mr. Kosicin to Mr. Pelleggi is about the non-participation of events is being already a punishment. Again, I will suggest that those are very technical comments. Maybe the sentiment I can extract from this is that maybe it's needed to have a specific meeting for ranking matters. And then at the end of the day, maybe this will help to alleviate, not to alleviate any doubt, but also to clarify positions and to be better prepared for decisions to be taken in the future. I don't know if any of the panelists, any of the participants, any of the attendees have any further comments. I know we are in the 7th of the 9 meetings, video conferences leading to the AGM. I know some of you have been already attending the majority of them, and of course I want to thank you for that. Those have not been able to attend, as you know, 24 hours, 48 hours after the meeting, we try to make sure the contents are posted on the ITTF website, but I will allow myself to make a final round of calls or questions. And if some of the persons with us today want to make some closing remarks from the executive committee, from the management, or if not, if no more questions or answers or chats, let me check on the chat. Sorry, we have here in the chat some comments. George Silver-Smith and Yusuf Karim. Grand Smash competitions. I don't know. Okay, so also in the chat, I think all of you have access to the chat, so you can see the comments from Mr. Silver-Smith in answer to Mr. Ireland. Mr. Karim, the president of the South African Table Tennis Board. Please share the documents. We are certainly concerned about regional championships. And then Mr. Silver-Smith, okay, so also answering on the same topic. So again, if nobody else wants to say anything, including my CEO or my elected officials, at 3, at 2, at 1. So I want to really thank you all for being part today of this video conference. Really, it's a pleasure, and it's really an honor to be able to work in this area of the governance for the ITTF. I want to thank again Mr. Weikart, Mr. Tenka, our legal counsel, Mr. Dilama, our CEO, Mr. Dainton, and also the new people coming to join ITTF in this modern structure, the whole ITTF tribunal led by Mr. Ibarrola, and the most recent incorporation on the 4th of October, Mr. Kevin Carpenter, although he's independent from the ITTF, but he's the new head of integrity. His task, not easy in the next couple of years, will be to develop a good integrity unit for the ITTF, so we can really make sure, as Dylan has explained through the propositions 6, 7, and 8, that in the future, we are not just talking about ethical matters or about infractions on doping, etc., but we have a broad integrity board that is taking over on all these matters. I see our president is on the screen. So Thomas, if you want to make some final remarks.
Yes, thank you, Raul. I think it was a fruitful session. And of course, there are different aspects, as always, in propositions and resolutions. So let's wait for the AGM. And finally, again, my wish to see you all in Houston and hope we have a successful championship there. Thanks all, and thank you, Raul, for moderating this session. Also, thanks to Jorge Ibarola. I think for the first time he was present. Of course, thank you to Rudy, and I hope I didn't forget. I mean, a lot of staff here. This is a general thank you, and yeah, see you all in Houston. Bye-bye. Over to you, Raul, for the final words.
Thank you, Thomas, and nothing to add. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe, please. Those of you that can travel to Houston, please have also safe travels. Remember, we have still two very important conferences. Next Thursday, we have the conference to present the 3 remaining bids for 2024 World Championships. One from Argentina for the city of Buenos Aires, one from Korea for the city of Busan, one from India for the city of Delhi. And just in case, I am presenting them in alphabetical order of the hosting cities. And nevertheless, looking forward to see you on Thursday, this interesting presentation on the candidate cities for 2024, and next Monday with the presentation of the candidates for the executive committee. Stay safe and see you soon in Houston. Goodbye.